Welcome to Live with Lindsay. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to Live with Lindsay. This is our inaugural taping, okay? It's so exciting for me as I have prayed for quite a few years about starting a podcast and YouTube. And I'll be quite honest, there's so many people in my life who I love and respect who would talk to me and say like, Linz, why don't you have a podcast? Why don't you have a YouTube yet? And I kept feeling like, because I'm a mom of 3, let's get real, okay? And a fire wife, and there's a lot going on. You're gonna get to know me a little bit more in just a moment. But I really wanted to make sure that the timing was right. And you're gonna see within these next few episodes how I truly believe in God being the complete source of guiding us daily, okay? And with every decision that we make. One thing that I've learned too is as I've grown up, I know that God has created us with extremely amazing gifts that no one in this world can offer, okay? Now, when I think of my childhood, I'm a native Californian, SoCal to be exact, and I've grown up my whole life here. And I was just reflecting on how I grew up, who my parents were, how I was nurtured, right, into the woman that I am today. And then also the God nature that he created me to be. And sadly, as I watch this world, we're at kind of a crazy time right now, but we watch this world unfold, I can't help but see that God has created so many of us with incredible gifts by nature, but we haven't been nurtured to explore them, right? So as I grew up, my mom was born and partly raised in Mexico, and my father, most of our family is really across the United States in Boston, Massachusetts. He's of Irish descent, okay? So they met each other in SoCal and fell completely in love. What I'm so grateful is that I was in the best loving household my entire life. Like when I think, you guys will find out what I did for 10 years, but I didn't experience this childhood trauma, okay? I didn't have something in my life that was like, oh my gosh, if I look back in these years of, from 5 to 12, I can't even remember because I've blocked it out. I don't have that. I look back and I have the most incredible memories of my parents loving my sister and I, taking us to church. My parents were, every Sunday we would go, we'd have family day. They were extremely strict. I couldn't watch Nickelodeon strict, okay? Ridiculous, but I'm so grateful now. But during this time, I look back and our household was sacred. It was a place where I felt so safe. And I'd even look back and my parents were kind of like these hippie Christians. Okay, now hold on, they weren't crazy, but they had such a heart to love people. They were not legalistic Christians. They were love. They always told us the important part of being a Christian is having a relationship with Christ, okay? There's one thing to take your kids to church every Sunday, even be on the board and, be part of the ministries, but yet they come home and they're so disconnected to their families. We've all met people like that, right? Well, my parents know they were serving at the church, but then at the same time coming home and they would model. I grew up with literally no alcohol in the home, and not that that was ever that's a no. It was just they wanted to be present and they wanted to make sure they were modeling. And I share this because as I grew up, my sister and I, we had such a blessed upbringing because my parents would talk to us, okay, about sex, alcohol, our faith, our choices. They wouldn't tell us hey, Linz, don't have sex because I said so, and in this verse, this is what God says, They would sit us down and talk to us and say, hey, these are the physical, emotional, spiritual effects that can happen when you have sex, right? They would tell us physiologically, you could create a human, you could get pregnant, or you can get really sick. So if you're giving your body to multiple people, there's things called STDs. They would break it down to the point of oh, it's the physical health, and then get into emotionally. Every time that you're connecting with someone, you're giving a part of your body. And a lot of times as women, we can be really emotionally led and think it's something bigger or more special because men are a bit more physical. Not to put us in little boxes, but it's the truth. Then they would go in and even tell us spiritually, it's a spiritual bond that you have with someone. And every time that you share your body with someone, it's gonna connect and you have soul ties. So when I'm growing up with the real conversations that my parents would tell me, it allowed me to nurture that God inside of me, because we all have the Holy Spirit in us when we accept him. to know, like, why am I holding my body so sacred? Why am I not partaking in certain things that my friends are? Because I know who God created me to be, and I know why he wants me to protect this body, right? So these are the things that I would grow up with. Same thing with alcohol. They weren't like, don't go drink at parties. They literally would tell us, like, girls, when you drink, you can't fully, like, you're not fully aware of your surroundings, right? When you become intoxicated, you make decisions that just aren't smart. You can get behind the wheel, you can kill yourself or someone else. They would explain things to us that allowed us to make decisions that I believe created the woman I am today. So I look back and I'm just blessed to see that both of my parents poured so much love, so much care into my upbringing. So naturally, when I had kids, which I have 3 of them with my husband, I have felt like it is my duty to nurture the God inside of them, okay? So a little bit about how I grew up. Yes, I had an amazing home, but also, if you can't tell, I was a performer. I was dancing and singing and acting and doing all the fun things on a worship team. I mean, I had such a fun life. I look back, I'm like, dude, my teens, that was a good time. Like waking up, going to school, going to cheer practice, dance, and we'd have games at night. Then I go to dance practice. I mean, it was just so fun. And I'm grateful because I had parents who allowed me to have that fun, right? So as I grew up, I went to college, first generation student. I went to a community college. And that in itself was kind of like, why would you go to a community college, Lindsay? You have honors. And it was kind of looked down upon. But I'm so grateful. I look back, that was a time God was preparing me. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I literally was that kid. And so if you're watching right now, you're like, I don't know what to do with my life. That was me. I was like, I want to dance. I want to sing. I want to do all these amazing things. But yet I still had this like urge inside of me to learn. I didn't want to not go to college, but I also didn't want to spend like $30,000 a year at some institution that I didn't even know what my major was. So I went to a community college a few years, figured some things out. I ended up getting my bachelor's in communication. If you can't tell, I love talking. And then got my master's in college counseling, okay? So this was a really neat part of my life, which we're gonna tap into a little bit later. But God led me to go back and serve these different disproportionately impacted students at a college, one of the top 10 institutions in the country. So I got hired at a very young age, the prime age of 26, after working at the college for a few years. But at 26, I got a tenured position as a college counselor and professor. That usually takes, 10 years to get, 5 years, and we're gonna talk a little more in detail about that because it's a miracle story. But I was in higher education for 10 years, my friends, and I was serving DACA students, students who were immigrants, also students who are first generation, as well as getting the honor to create a foster youth program. So I was working with students who had come out of abusive relationships. They were sexually trafficked. They had gone through a lot of trauma. And all that did for me was allow me to understand how powerful it was to have a special, protected, time growing up with my family. And I was like, when I have family, when I have my own kids, I have to make sure I protect them with all of my being. So for 10 years, again, working at the college, my husband, who you guys I haven't even mentioned, and you will get to meet him later, I met when I was 13, okay? When I was 13, he said, Linz, I'm gonna marry you. I was like, okay. I was like, whatever, dude. He was totally hot. Don't get me wrong. I was like, he's a babe. But at that time, again, I was just worried about dancing and cheering and having fun and having sleepovers like a little 13-year-old should. Thank God. But as we got older, we developed a friendship. We dated a little bit on and off in high school. And then at age 22, we rekindled. And he was like this hunky firefighter. And I was like, oh, hey, right? So came crawling back, and you'll hear more about that story because there's a lot in between. But at 22, rekindled that relationship. And we have brought 3 beautiful girls into this world. They are 8, 6, and 2, and they have been the biggest blessings to our life. They also have brought a purpose to my life that I never thought I had, which was to champion and advocate for my babies. For the past 10 years, I have advocated for the 1% at the colleges, the foster youth, the ones who weren't seen, the voice for the voiceless. But not in a million years did I ever think I'd have to advocate for my babies in Southern California to be protected. So this is kind of where my path had changed, my friends. About 5 years ago, I was offered to be a special contributor at one of a conservative Christian station in Los Angeles. So I was working as a professor counselor on the radio. Things were popping. I was starting my business, coaching and e-commerce. There was a lot going on. But as we know in our culture right now, it's like you get a badge of honor for being busy, right? Like, oh, she is so put together. But at the end of the day, if there's nothing left to give to your babies, nothing left to give to your husband, what's it all for, right? So at that time, God was stirring something in my heart and soul and saying like, Lindsay, I got something more for you. And for me, it was like, no, I got my stuff going on. I don't need, I think we're good, right? But the Lord had called me. He's like, I need you to start stepping up for your children. And so over a year ago, I started researching curriculum, researching what was going on in our institutions for our children that was like literally trickling up to the college, because I was watching this very woke agenda coming through, seeping in the college, and realizing there's not a coincidence. They have not just started at college. It started in elementary school, right? So as I started researching hours, I might be up till 2, 3 in the morning, just reading, watching teachers union meetings. I mean, I got kind of crazy in it, but like I knew it was my duty as a mommy. If I was gonna send my kids to public school, which I'm totally cool for because that's where I went, I realized I need to know what's being taught. But sadly, the public school sector, what it was 20, 30 years ago, is not the same it is today. And so my husband and I started showing up again to the school board meetings. We started advocating for our babies, asking for that change to partner together. And we had a big group of people, and I thought, oh, we're gonna be doing great things, God. Little did I know, God was like, yeah, thank you for advocating, but I'm gonna ask you, Lindsay, I'm gonna ask you and your husband to take a leap of faith. And those 10 years that you've been creating pathways in college, I'm gonna ask you to start making pathways for children in your community. I laughed. I thought, there's just no way, God. When can I ever figure the time to do this, right? So naturally, God had to get my attention a few times. And after a few weeks of praying, I was like, all right, Lord. And I was very specific. And I'm going to get more in tune with that in one of our other episodes, but very specific with my prayers. But what I can tell you is this week, we are celebrating our 1 year of starting microclass pathways, okay? And this is allowing our children to thrive and be protected while also keeping family units together and part of our children's education. Last year we had, about 14 and 20 students. This year we're almost having 30 students that are being protected, and we're celebrating with our second year this week. So I'm so blessed and grateful what God has done in this entire journey and what he's continuing to do as I'm coaching women and with my e-commerce. And you guys have to hear that it's gonna be a year this November that I walked away from my tenured position at the college. And that was not an easy stepping away, because let's get real, everyone has an ego. You have this status, I'm a counselor and professor and I'm so wise. And you get attached to that title. And God's like, your title is in me. You are a Christ-led woman and you need to find your security in me. And if I've called you to create pathways for these 30 kids, I need you to be on assignment for that. So I want to encourage you. I don't know what God has in store for you, but I do know that every single part of your life has put you into being the woman or man that you are today, and that God has specific assignments for you. And sometimes you may think, God, I'm not the girl. I'm not the man. You didn't call me to do that. But if you listen closely, you know that he will speak to you and he will give you clear confirmation. But it's up to us to actually move forward in our faith. And you can look fabulous and have fun doing it. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to my first Live with Lindsay episode. Love you.